but when you talk about erotic attachment, do you mind just for our audience distinguishing that from the more commonplace use of erotic, just to give a fuller and clearer picture of what you're talking about with that creation of subjective?
It doesn't mean, erotic attachment doesn't mean sort of, we might say, sort of more balder notion of sexual attachment. It means the sort of thrust for connection with something which is loving, and so that eros as a force, at a time can take, in fact, sexual activity, but as a force, it's inevitably compelling you outside, or better what. As a force, it's inevitably invading you, and it's making demands on you, and you're making demands on it. And so there's a way in which you want to say, and this, that we are somehow the medium through which this force operates, and what it does is it's inevitably compelling us to find objects, and the objects are not quite what we want, but they then come back and affirm us, make a demand on us, and then we make a demand on them, and in this dialectic back and forth, you might say an affective bond might be the better term of putting it. An affective bond is formed, and that bond just keeps potentially expands. And maybe a good way to think about it is, if we go back to the Phaedrus, the sort of paradigmatic erotic instance is conversation, and it's conversation ultimately between a lover and a beloved. And in a good erotic conversation, what you realize is the ideas and the thoughts don't belong to the participants as individuals, but belong to the participants to the extent that they are in this shared relationship, to the extent that they are somehow participating in being erotically engaged with each other. And so that's the way I would tend to think about it.
I want to make sure I'm tracking with you, and I think I am. Would an example good example be? So I have, we talked about this at the beginning. I have 5 kids here at the house, and there are certain days where all I want to do is just go in a room by myself and not be interrupted, right?
Right.
Even if they don't say anything, and even like my wife works from home, I work from home. So like my wife is around, and it's a multi-generational house. So my parents are around, and just, even if they're not asking anything of me, just by their very presence, there are demands on me,
yes.
Right? In a way that if I was just in this house by myself, I would not be challenged, right? Like the fact that there is this desire for the other, and this even the kind of the knowledge that they are there, and that they are watching me, that they are interacting with me, that the future holds, like, oh man, if I make dinner, I have to make it with them in mind, right? It's not just, what do I want, right? Is that a good illustration of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it's actually an excellent illustration. And kids are really helpful that way, because you keep on saying, well, why don't they do exactly what I want them to do? Why do they have this kind of, why do they have this independence? And you realize, to the extent that they have good independence, it forces you as a parent and an adult to grow. And that you want to say the worst thing in the world would be have a fully obedient child.